Thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon to all of you. It's such a pleasure to be here and be part of this meeting. I'm hoping that you can have some great takeaways from this discussion. What I'm going to be discussing today is navigating the artificial intelligence landscape, where to invest to realize the greatest gains. Just as a full disclaimer, I am an employee of NYU, and I serve on the boards of PCORI and Global Medical Response. The views expressed here are my own personal views and do not represent any of the institutions in which I'm affiliated. But we can also make these slides widely distributed after the meeting if you so request. But I just ask that you make a formal request so that we know what the intended use is. All right, let's jump right into it. I'm always fascinated with the World Economic Forum. They produce a Future of Jobs report annually, where they talk about the fastest growing jobs and the top 10 fastest declining jobs. You can see that the number one role that is the fastest growing role is AI and machine learning specialists. That is an indication of where the greatest need is and also where the lowest supply is. But if you look at, if you were to take a quick look at the top 10 fastest declining roles, you can see that many of these roles are basically impacted with technology and in some cases, artificial intelligence. So what it did is it prompted me to think about what should I do and how do I familiarize myself with the AI technologies that are out there. So I actually, on March 7th, early this year, I did my very first prompt with OpenAI and or ChatGPT specifically was, can you tell me who is Chris Boone from AbbVie? And what it actually stated was, and which I thought to be relatively accurate, was Chris Boone is the vice president and global head of health economics and outcomes research at AbbVie, a pharmaceutical company that focuses on developing drugs for various health conditions. As the head of HEOR, Chris is responsible for leading a team that conducts research to demonstrate the value of AbbVie's drugs to patients, healthcare providers, and payers. It goes on, but it essentially concludes with, prior to joining AbbVie, Chris held several leadership positions at other pharmaceutical companies and academic institutions. I read this and the first thing I thought was, wow, that's pretty accurate. It's pretty spot on. So it prompted me to go then to my second official prompt, which is, where did Chris Boone work prior to AbbVie? And I only asked that because it said that I worked at other pharmaceutical companies and academic institutions before. And what it actually gave back to me was, I am not aware which Chris Boone you're referring to, as there may be multiple people with that name. However, if you're referring to the Chris Boone who is the vice president and global head of HEOR at AbbVie, he previously worked at Pfizer, where he held the position of vice president and head of real world data and analytics. Now, that part is true. But then it says, prior to that, he worked at United Biosource Corporation as the senior vice president of real world evidence and at Pharmetrics as the vice president of research and data operations. That, unfortunately, is not true. So what you're seeing is a clear sort of indication or an opportunity, if you will, to ensure that data quality and data accuracy are important as we feed into many of these models. This output is only as good as the data in, so it's truly a garbage in, garbage out situation. What I want to do now is I'm fascinated by this particular quote. Speaking along the lines of data quality, Joshua Smith, who's over at the IBM T.J. Watson Research Center, actually was quoted saying, "Anywhere there is data and the need for deeper insight, AI has a role to play in accelerating innovation at scale." My personal belief is that whether companies want to accept it or not, every single company in every single industry is a data company. So if you think of what Joshua Smith is saying right now, you can see how apropos it is to think about how every company should be thinking about the utility of AI in its business operations to either be more efficient or more effective in certain activities. There was also a annual survey that's actually that's produced by Forbes every year, and this year they decided to focus on AI. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the feedback that we're hearing now from the CEO's vantage point of how they think about AI. The first question was, which emerging AI technologies will create the most opportunities for business? And so as they were asked this question, 58% of them responded with predictive AI. 12% responded with generative AI. 12% responded with robotic process automation. Then you see 5G and Internet of Things and sort of your VR or your virtual reality. But when asking about most companies who have actually utilized or used generative AI, 59% of those companies, and then keep in mind, this is from the perspective of the CEO, are using or experimenting with generative AI as a part of their business processes. 29% plan to use it, but have not yet begun it. And 12% literally have no plans to use it, which I think is very concerning, considering I just said that, that every company is a data company, whether they want to accept it or not. When it asks what is the expected impact of AI on headcount, in 2024, 22% of them said fewer workers are needed, but they anticipate by 2028, 74% of the respondents feel like fewer workers will be needed. So as you can see from the eyes of the CEO, there is an impetus to really think about how to utilize artificial intelligence to ultimately use it in lieu of actual headcount or human intervention. The questions that I hope to address today, in light of some of the data that I just provided, is number one, what value use cases are we seeing across industries utilizing generative AI? Number two, what are some leading practices and near-term actions learned from the pioneering companies advancing use of generative AI? And third, what are the three ways corporate executives can prepare their organizations for generative AI? I'm going to, and with those questions, that'll essentially be my outline for how we go through the rest of this discussion. We'll talk about the potential value. We'll talk about the public opinion on generative AI. We'll talk about this need for corporate oversight. And then I'm going to leave you with my 3-point game plan. And of course, we'll have our Q&A thereafter. First and foremost, let's talk about what is generative AI. I know that many people hear the term, they've heard it. Most folks are repeating it, but just to ground ourselves for this conversation, I'm going to use this definition. Unlike traditional AI systems that are typically designed to solve specific tasks or problems, generative AI is more focused on creativity and generating new and original content comparable to what a human might create without human input. It works by using deep learning algorithms to analyze and learn from large amounts of data, such as images or text. When you think about some of the key industries that are utilizing generative AI at this point, you have healthcare and life sciences, which is where I work. You have manufacturing and engineering with many of the robotics technologies. You're seeing robotics and autonomous systems, as you're seeing with many of the electric vehicles and those cars. You're seeing it definitely in financial services with much of the stock data reporting. You're seeing it in creative industries, hence the reason you actually have a strike now with the Writers Guild. And then you're also seeing it very much so in transportation and logistics, as they do a lot of the route planning and sort of tracking the demand for drivers with many of those deliveries. But some industries have already seen a transformative impact or effect from using generative AI. Now, biopharma, which is exactly where I am, and this data is being reported by BCG, just so you know. What they saw was, so generative AI identified a novel drug candidate for the treatment of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis in 21 days. Now, typically, that would take years when you use many of the traditional methods. So you can see where generative AI is being used in the discovery of novel drugs or molecules to treat certain diseases. In the technology industry, you're seeing that 88% of software developers reported having higher productivity when using a generative AI code assistant. In the insurance industry, 30% of InsurTech platforms leveraging generative AI were able to reduce up to approximately 30% of customer service cost. So there are measurable impacts of how generative AI is being used in many of these industries and how they're being essentially making these organizations much more efficient. When you think about globally, this sort of corporate investment in AI, when it was in 2013, you saw it at roughly $14.57 billion dollars. Now you've seen a 13x increase by 2021. Now there was a slight dip in 2022. I think it was sort of a factor of many of the companies sort of assessing where they were in their investments. But you can still see a pretty substantial increase from 2013. Even if you think about it from a public sector perspective, you're seeing a significant increase in the budget, federal budget for AI R&D from FY 2018 to now where we are in 2023. Now, one of the things that you probably have heard about is the significant cost it takes to build your own large language model. Now, if you looked at some of the training costs for many of these, now granted, this is in millions of dollars. You can see AlphaCode, which is 0.09, GPT Neo X, 0.24, Palm, which is roughly $8 million, Bloom, which is a little bit over $2 million. So there is a significant cost to training many of these large models. And I want you to keep that in mind as we continue to go through this conversation. As you train a custom large language model, we'll offer greater flexibility, but that comes with high costs, which is essentially what I was just describing. So you really have three sort of opportunities to think about it as you're considering your models. You can develop a new cutting edge foundation model, which will pretty much run you $50 to $90 million plus to build out. You can enhance an existing foundation model, which is certainly much more reasonable. You see from $1 to $10 million of an estimated cost. Or you can fine tune an existing foundation model that is out there. So you can essentially take something such as ChatGPT and you can do it for a specific task, and that's anywhere from $10 to $100,000 of estimated cost. Now we're going to jump in a little bit of how the public is reacting to generative AI. I'm always fascinated with this because basically in 2016, there was an open letter published by some very prominent individuals, and it was titled Research Priorities for Robust and Beneficial Artificial Intelligence, an open letter. This was essentially the genesis of what we know now as OpenAI, the organization. But many of the prominent signatories that signed this open letter were individuals like Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Yoshua Bengio, Stuart Russell, and many, many, many others. But I just highlighted these few individuals for a reason. But then when you go to where you fast forward to where we are in March of 2023, there was an open letter to pause all giant AI experiments. And again, the prominent signatories were Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Yoshua Bengio, Stuart Russell, pretty much the similar, very same individuals who were part of the push for AI. And I bring this up to simply say that there is a recognized concern about the potential of AI and what the impact is, and honestly we still don't fully understand all the unintended consequences that are associated with the technology. Just from a corporate perspective, earlier this year you saw that, of course, Elon Musk was quoted saying there's a chance AI goes wrong and destroys humanity. Apple's co-founder says AI will make it easier for bad actors to get away with more convincing scams. And then you just saw a number of, you have Warren Buffett, who actually said that it's like unleashing the atomic bomb, as it's what he felt like AI was analogous to. So, there's some genuine concern from folks who have very big platforms in how they're thinking about generative AI. But you also saw a number of companies who actually banned employees for using ChatGPT at work. As you think about the uptick in AI controversies from 2017 to 2021, this is actually an index report that's published annually. And you can see from 2017 to 2021, a 440% increase in the number of AI incidents and controversies. Basically, I would I'm sure that once the data is reported for 2023, that number would be significantly higher than it was in 2021. But there's also been an increase in the number of ethics-related publications as it pertains to the use of AI, which I think is a good thing. Now, many of these ethical papers are providing ethical frameworks and how we can think about the use of AI, but some are expressing ethical concerns, to sort of bring greater awareness to the public about how AI is and can be used, or as Elon Musk would say, its potential impact on humanity broadly. Neil deGrasse Tyson was actually put out a tweet back in May, and he says, "If artificial intelligence fouls up society, then how intelligent was it, really?" I actually thought that that quote was funny, but in many respects accurate. But when you look at much of the data and you look at many of the publications that are out there, I think there are many risks that are being identified, but there are six that really stood out to me as it pertains to generative AI. The first thing is the shadow AI and how you can create. Let me go back to that. Shadow AI, and then you got biased outputs. You have enhanced fraud and phishing. You have lack of truth function, meaning that that's where the garbage in, garbage out comes out. And most people, and then even as you start to build models, they start to utilize the outputs of prior models. So if those prior models actually had inaccurate data, then you have, an even worse situation. Then you have the copyright infringement, where many of the artists have expressed concern about their voices and or music, lyrics, whatever, being used to create new music, and it's all developed by AI. And then, of course, one of the big things for many of the companies is the proprietary data leaks, hence the reason you saw many of these companies actually ban it. The U.S. government is actually taking action on the AI risk. So the Biden-Harris administration has convened a number of the leading companies that are driving much of what we're seeing in generative AI to to provide input into what is now what they call the AI Bill of Rights. Much of that is put out there. It's sort of based on 5 dimensions: safe and effective systems, algorithmic discrimination protections, data privacy, notice and explanation, and human alternatives consideration and fallback. I would encourage you to go check it out, read it in detail. It's actually pretty fascinating, and you'll see they have much of the meeting minutes and notes from the discussions that they had available as well, and you can see how they got to this point. Let's jump into corporate oversight of AI. This is some data that was actually produced by Baker McKenzie as they did an AI survey to better understand what is the level of corporate oversight we're seeing in the US. And then when they did the survey, 4% of the respondents considered the risk associated with using AI to be significant, only 4%. 38% believe their company's board of directors is not fully aware of how AI is being used across the organization. 36% of respondents currently have a chief AI officer in place. So only 36% of the companies that were represented in this survey. 24% of those respondents say their corporate policies for managing AI risk are undocumented or they do not exist at all. So you have roughly a quarter of those companies who are still trying to find their way with developing policies around how AI, what the AI risks are and how it should be managed. Now, let's jump into a little bit about not having C-level representation on AI. As I earlier, stated, every company is a data company. Therefore, every company needs to think about how AI impacts its business. So this particular question as part of that survey was, does your company have a dedicated chief AI officer? Now, 36% of them said yes. 64% of them said no. But of that 64%, 43% of those companies plan to hire in the next 2 years, and 15% plan to hire in the future. And you have 6% that have no plans on hiring or building this function at all. And so that's where we go. And then just so you know, there was 500 companies represented in this survey. When they asked them about how do they think about the bias and reputational issues as top risk of AI. More formally, the question was, what are the biggest current AI related risks to your organization? 69% of them said cybersecurity, 65% said data privacy, 57% said legal liability. But it's interesting. It was fascinating to me that many of these companies overlooked the reputation, the recruitment, and algorithm bias that are perceived as top risk, but they're not at the top of the top concern for many of these organizations, which I would have actually put organizational reputation, recruitment fairness, and things like that at the top if it were me. The next question was sort of around which department, if any, is currently responsible for the oversight and management of AI related or enabled tools and technology at the enterprise level. As you would expect, 83% of those respondents felt that it was an IT issue, and 70% feel like it was an information security issue. And a lot of that is sort of linked back to the cybersecurity concerns. And then you have, human resources, risk management, operations, and even legal as being responsible for the oversight and management of AI tools. As you start to think about what types of org structures should you have for an AI function, there are many models that you're seeing that are being created. You're seeing the federated or decentralized model where you may have a team of folks embedded in a particular business unit, and they're responsible for the data and the AI strategy for that particular business unit. You have the centralized approach, which is where all AI capabilities are sort of centralized into we'll call it a center of excellence. Now, the great thing about that is sort of the economies of scale. You have a concentrated group. They typically learn from each other, whereas they feel like you're on an island a little bit under the federated or decentralized model. But then you have a hybrid model where you may still have that center of excellence that serves more of a hub and spoke, where they will set governance, they will set best practices, and they will also do much of your knowledge sharing. But you also get the benefit of having those dedicated teams within those business units who know those particular business units and can provide better guidance in that way. That brings us to now our 3-point game plan. Now, I call this the GPT game plan, sort of a double entendre, but in my case, it actually means governance, people, and technology is how I'm thinking about it. First, as you think about the governance of AI or generative AI, what you're really seeking to do is to realize the gains by protecting your business with clear policies that address the critical risk. And the first thing, in order to achieve that, you must conduct a risk assessment to understand if and where any sort of AI capabilities exist or are being used or even considered. The second thing is you want to be able to sort of develop and disseminate governance policies. We highlighted in those survey results that many of these companies do not have that in place. There are many consulting firms and law firms and others who are providing that level of guidance on how you should be thinking about oversight and government policies. And to be quite frank, to not have that capability or to not have that level of understanding, even at the board of directors level, I would think is concerning. The second dimension of this game plan is people. And this is where you're trying to realize the gains by utilizing strategic workforce planning and transforming your operating models. The reality is this: most people, most organizations really don't want to change. But to utilize generative AI or AI in general more effectively, it's important that you establish a senior C-suite role, for example, the chief AI officer, so that you can elevate the importance and elevate the dialogue to the C-suite and to the board and signal to the organization how important it is to be organized around this particular technology. The second thing you want to think about is how do you assemble a cross-functional team? It's not just data scientists, but it's AI experts, it's ethics specialists, it's domain specialists in those particular BU, and you also have your IT personnel that's part of this group as well. It will take a interdisciplinary approach in order to effectively develop and execute a Gen AI strategy. The third thing is that you want to consider centralizing those functions, where you have your R&D function, which I'm saying AI R&D is what I mean by that, and IT, and supplying LLMs and data engineers. And the reason that that is important, and we just talked about, you have three different approaches to sort of building, of thinking about your LLM strategy. You can certainly build it yourself. You can sort of take one that's existing and customize. You can certainly send one that's already there and pretty much where you 80% of the way there, and you tinker with it to get it to fit your specific needs. But it's all about the time and the budget that you have to dedicate to it. The last dimension is technology, where you realize the gains by investing in infrastructure and experimentation. That really requires building a culture of innovation and experimentation. You have to raise your own risk tolerance for that. The second thing is that you want to plan for a long-term advantage through investment in talent and infrastructure. The third thing is you want to be able to start small and really focus on very targeted use cases. Then you want to be able to consider which existing LLMs and customizing them with your own data sources. Now you can create private LLMs so that you don't expose your proprietary data to the public. And then the last thing is that you have to be in this sort of perpetual learning state, right? Where you're continuously learning and staying up to date on emerging developments. So the key takeaways from this talk is that start small and focus on specific use cases. Number two, involve stakeholders from across the organization, because that's critically important. You want to be able to invest in the right talent and infrastructure. Please maintain a focus on privacy, transparency, algorithmic bias, and ethics. Consider using existing LLMs and customizing them with your own data sources. And lastly, continue to learn and to stay up to date on emerging developments. I'm going to leave you with this. This is my call to action as you think about building a culture of innovation and experimentation. Your first option is that you can just do nothing. And you say, just do nothing, it is impossible. Or you can just do it, nothing is impossible. And hopefully you take that as your mantra as you move forward. Best of luck to all of you. And I look forward to connecting with you and having further discussion. You can actually connect with me here, LinkedIn, YouTube, my webpage, whatever you choose. I'm always available. Thank you very much.